Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, and my guest this week is probably, other than Livewire McGuire, the person that made the biggest impression on me that first AAPW show that I attended in Sparta, Illinois. A show that, for all intents and purposes, should have drove everybody away because the ceiling was so low, as you remember from the Livewire episode. But in addition to Livewire, there was one guy, and he had a feather boa on, and he was billed by his manager as the sexiest man in the world. Won bodybuilding competitions around the world with his patented maneuver, the Anglo-Saxon butterfly, which made me laugh so hard. I said, "This guy is freaking amazing." Please welcome PlayBoy Paul Rose the show. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Also, it's the Anglo-Saxon butterfly of doom.
Gotcha. My mistake. My mistake there, sir. So, my standard first question with all my wrestling guests is were you a fan of wrestling growing up?
With wrestling growing up, I was kind of raised Christian background, so I didn't get that much wrestling. Until I went to the movie store one day as probably a 4 or 5 year old kid, and I was there with my cousin at the time, and I saw a guy with painted face on a VHS. I don't remember if it was Ultimate Warrior or Sting. It was one of the two. I picked it up and I took it home, popped it in the VHS player in my room, and fell in love automatically with the scenery and the moves and the guys and just how they would just beat each other. That's probably how I got into wrestling as a child. Yeah.
So, what were you a WWF guy growing up, or
Yeah, that's pretty much all I knew was WWF back when I was a kid. I didn't find out about WCW until I was probably 10, 11 years old. Then I went back, and of course I've watched all their backlog stuff since then, but
right?
I didn't find that out until I was a little bit older. There was a rival company. I think that's probably when Nitro was starting to get hot.
Gotcha,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, I do remember seeing Flying Brian Pillman and Jushin Thunder Liger, though. I believe
Oh,
that was,
nice,
yeah.
nice. Those are some of my favorites. So yeah, I'm a huge Liger fan. So,
Oh, yeah.
do you have going through school? Did you have an amateur wrestling background or an athletic background, or did you do theater? Were you a theater kid or a band? Like
I
what was
was
your
I was a
background
band
like?
geek.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was a band geek. I didn't play any sports until my senior year of high school, really. As a child, I played midget league basketball and baseball and things of that nature. But it wasn't until high school, senior year, that I actually played football. Other than that, I was a band geek, man. I was a band geek, drama geek, into the acting part. That was my goal, was to be an entertainer any way possible.
Re- Okay. So, segueing off of that, what did you attempt other forms of being an entertainer before you got to pro wrestling, or were you driven to be a pro wrestler? Was it kind of a little of both? What made you want to pursue wrestling?
What made me want to pursue wrestling was, even from a little kid, I was always told my mom, I was like, I'm going to be a rock star or a wrestler or somebody that commands attention. I even thought about being a lawyer because I'd watched so many movies that the lawyers commanded attention from the courtroom, you know. And I was like, maybe a lawyer or a wrestler. And my mom was like, oh, you're going crazy, you know. That's just all over the spectrum. But yeah, I guess what got me actually wanting to do the wrestling was just knowing that I was good at, I don't want to say I was backyard wrestling. I was properly trained at one point, but when I was a kid, of course, you backyard wrestle with your
Oh, y'all
buddies and
do.
whatnot. And I was the one who was calling the matches and figuring them out and landing properly and showing kids how to land properly and things. And I believe that was also during that time where Tough Enough had just came out from the WF, and they were showing all that behind the scenes stuff, like how to land and how to do this and that. And I was picking up on that. So that just, being an entertainer, what I wanted to be, really drove me into the wrestling scene.
It's funny you mentioned the backyard because it's a little personal sidebar. Around the time we started following AAPW and you, Edmund, Rich, Masters, etc., me and my friends built a ring out of mattresses, tires, and a wooden frame. And like everybody else, like on the internet, was like doing the hardcore crazy stuff, we're like, no, we're gonna be the backyard people that do, we chain wrestle, we land properly,
Yeah,
we try to use
yeah, that's
psychology, and then like, and we're watching our match back. Yeah, we're really, really good, and like we watch them back now, like, oh my god, we're awful.
yeah. I mean, as a kid, you don't see, when you're out there, you're just going through the motions, you're just having fun. Of course, when you get into it and you're schooling and you learn, okay, there's way more to it than that.
There's a lot more to psychology than just like, well, I kept punching the dude's leg, and then I put him in a figure four and one. But that
Right,
was like
right.
our idea of psychology. But so what you said you went, that was the avenue you took. Who trained you? Where did you go train? How did you hear about, your training school? Take me through the process of getting to training.
Okay, to training. Well, I had a friend. Her name was Jenny. We had hung out a couple of times, and I'd been to her house a few times and met her mother and her boyfriend, her mother's boyfriend, and he was a really big, stocky guy, and me and him got along really well. Um, One day I came over and he wasn't there, and I was like, "Oh, where's so and so?" And they said, "Well, Don's at wrestling practice." And I looked at him. I said, "What kind of wrestling?" And they said, "Professional wrestling." And my eyes got big as plates, and I was like, wait. And I said, so is he teaching it? Is he doing a show? They're like, no, he teaches it. And I was like, oh no, I got to go up there. And so I made this girl drive me to the gym here in Sykeston. It was called Max Out Gym. It was ran by Donnie Davis Jr. and Don Davis Sr. Both Don Davis Sr. had been a wrestler for multiple years in the past under the Colorado Kid. He was the original Colorado Kid.
I remember seeing
And
him
then,
at small spot shows in my area as well, like when they'd have fundraisers. I remember the Colorado Kid seemed to be the guy that was kind of around here in the Southern Illinois area before
yeah,
AAPW like really
well,
got its foothold.
there's a Colorado Kid, Mike Rampada. There is a gentleman by that name that still does that or did that gimmick up until recently. However, Don was the original originator of it. He said
Gotcha.
back in like the 50s and 60s.
Oh god. Oh wow. Maybe I
Yeah.
just learned. I
So
just
and
learned
maybe he
something
was.
today. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So he said he donned that moniker way back in the day. But his son is named Donnie Davis Jr. or Dangerous Donnie Six as he wrestles in CCW in Cape under Dangerous Donnie Six.
Okay.
Um, However, I went to the gym with that girl, and they were back there doing wrestling practice, and I went back there and I said, "I'd like to be a wrestler." And he looked me up and down. At that time, I was about 340 pounds. He looked me up and down and he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll train you, but I have a show in 2 weeks and I have no referee." So in 2 weeks, they crammed me full of knowledge how to be a referee. So my first show was actually a referee, the biggest referee in the history of referees. I made everybody look tiny because I was a humongous referee. But I did that, and then he started training me and gave me a little bit of a discount for helping him out doing that. So I trained for close to a year before I had my first match.
And what year was
And
this?
2004 or
Okay.
2005, right around that area. Yeah, I started at 19, so it was about in 2004. Yeah.
Okay. So you get trained, and from there, are you just working around the Southeast Missouri area? Or are you working like where all are you starting
Well,
shows? I know this was
when I
before
first
CCW, but
yeah, when I first got trained, I worked for Absolute Pro, which was Donnie's his little company that lasted for a few months. Um, then I did see a lot of Heartland Championship Wrestling, which we don't want to talk about that. That was an awful, awful experience.
fair enough, fair
Uh,
enough.
um, then I went to a ton of different promotions. I reached out to NWA Top Rope, NWA Main Event, which would run out of Columbia and run out of Lebanon, Tennessee. Worked in Nashville with some guys. Worked in Arkansas with people in Osceola and even farther south. Um, Man, I've been in Nevada. I've wrestled in Oregon. I've wrestled
Oh
just I
wow,
probably
I
yeah,
didn't
I've
know you
wrestled
went that
everybody.
far west. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm actually moved to Oregon. That's why I'll tell you this story later when the AAPW. But I did move during the AAPW tapings. That's why I left the company was because I moved my wife to Oregon and I moved out there and did some wrestling out there for a while.
okay. So, Will, the next question I have for you, and you can you can say whatever you feel comfortable saying. You can hide names if you want to. You can tell fun stories. Just give me some interesting stories from the road. That's just fun stories of any kind from the road or from backstage or anything you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh man, there's countless backstage stories that you could tell. Just ribbing people, lightly ribbing. I never did anything too gross, but lightly rib. Put some shaving cream in your bag or something a little light. But oh man, let me think. I was kind of the guy that stayed back. I really didn't pull too many ribs. I was kind of just the guy who looked at all the young kids and I said, I don't want to be a part of that group. I'd rather stick over here with my veteran guys.
Right.
Young kids were acting wild and crazy. I was seeking knowledge at that time. Ribs, yeah. I try to think of funny stories. Other than just not getting paid at a couple shows and having to get my payment. One was Union City, Tennessee, where the guy had booked a cast of legends and people, and he didn't have a dime to pay anybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Lawler was there, Rikishi was there, Brian Christopher was there. Sorry about that, Buzz. Somebody text me.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
Rikishi was there. I mean, Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, all these people that are requiring thousands of dollars a piece. This guy had no money, and
Wow.
I'm not going to get into schematics about what happened because there probably could be some police reports filed and all kinds of stuff. Needless to say, this man was strolled out naked in front of us and embarrassed in front of us, and we eventually all got our money. Trust me.
Gotcha. Well, we mentioned kind of some big names and some stories, so we're going to go ahead and segue into the AAPW years. This is how I
Okay.
first became familiar with you, and I told the story both in the previous Livewire McGuire and Kevin Huntsberger episodes, where my first exposure to All American Pro Wrestling came from the Carbondale WWE SmackDown house show, where I'm just getting flyers and uh, for a show at the Sports Blast Arena. I missed that show for one reason or another. It's therefore making my first exposure to the Sparta show. But
Right.
on that show, there were some heavy hitters and names that, I mean, you had Tracy Brooks, you had ODB, you had
Abyss,
Abyss,
Eric
Eric
Young,
Young, The Naturals, quite a few.
James Storm.
James
Yeah.
Storm was there, so you had quite a few guys that not only were this wasn't like you were just getting like the lower tier TNA guys, like you were getting some name. I mean, maybe not Sting or Kurt or
Right.
AJ, but you were getting some names,
Right.
and a lot of them went on to have success beyond TNA. What was that show like with all those guys there?
They were all really, really cool. I think that those guys had just
Guys and
grind their
girls, I
no.
should say.
Yeah, I mean, their guys have just grinded their nose so fat, so much that those guys were just soaked with knowledge, and they were talking about things that I didn't even think about. Like, you're going to do this move, and you're going to, it's going to act like it tweaks your knee a little bit, and then in the end, that's going to play into the finish. And I was like, oh, okay, so you're just not attacking the knee, just a little tweak here from him, doing a move to you that hurt his knee. It was just like little things that I didn't even think about, and those guys were super nice, and then they would give you the shirt off their backs. Eric Young was an absolute joy to be around. Actually, all of them were, and Tracy Brooks was very nice to look at.
Frankie
She did
Kazarian is
not.
a lucky man.
Hey, she didn't need her own dressing room or nothing. She did not care. She was like, I'm one of the boys. I was like, all right, girl, whatever, do your thing.
Um, oh, how was Abyss? That was always the one that, because my friends, they Abyss did a signing, and I missed that, so my friends brought me back an Abyss autograph, and I was always, and they said meeting him, he was like not in character at all, and then like a month later, there was a TNA Fan Fest in St. Louis, and I went to meet Abyss to actually get to at least meet him, and he's completely in character. I'm like, hello, sir. I'm like, aw.
Oh yeah.
I missed the
Um,
fun Abyss. What? Do you have any Abyss stories, or what was he like?
he was super nice. I walked up to him, and he didn't have his gear on or anything, of course. And I knew who he was, and I shook his hand. I said, "Nice to meet you. I'm so and so. I think I probably called. I probably said Playboy. Um, and he looked me up and down. He said, "Good gimmick, kid." And then I looked at him, and I don't think he's too much off for my age, really. And but he might have been a little. He might be a little bit older than I am. But he just looked me up and down and said, "Good gimmick, kid." And I looked at him and said, "Thanks." And he goes, "You can call me Chris." And I was like, "Oh, well, thanks, man." So I
It's
knew. I mean, he was super nice. I mean, but he was very quiet, reserved, and it's pretty much as soon as his job was done, he was. They were in and out, of course.
right. Um, I'm actually glad you you mentioned this, bring up the gimmick because I skipped over in my notes. Where did the gimmick come from? What went into the
The
what? How did
Playboy
you
Paul
come up with
Rose
the
gimmick.
Playboy Paul Rose gimmick? How did that come
Uh,
about?
Well, with my trainer, after I got done with all my training, and we kind of sit down and we looked at a few options, like a farmer option, and we looked at, okay, we looked at this and that, and we were just trying to put something together. And I said, I had this Playboy bunny tattoo on my arm, and he said, "What's that tattoo mean?" I was like, "Oh, I just got it when I was 18. I was able to get any tattoo. I just picked this Playboy bunny." And he's like, "You heard about Playboy Buddy Rose?" And I said, "Yeah, I knew what Playboy Buddy Rose is. I really don't want to rip off his gimmick, though, because, everybody's going to know I ripped off his gimmick." And we talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. And finally, we just decided that that was a great way to get heat. That was a great way to, get the comedy aspect. That was a great way to be able to put the beat down on somebody and legit look like, okay, this is a big man. He is legit putting the beat down on this guy. Um, and to play it up with the crowd, I was like, it just all kind of fits. I regret kind of taking the Rose last name. I probably should have thought of something more, exciting, and maybe even the Playboy moniker could have went away. But with the big bunny on my arm and stuff like that, it's kind of just stuck. So that was kind of the gimmick, was a Playboy Buddy Rose. I don't want to say rip off. I was kind of myself, but pretty much the same thing that he did as well.
So there was another big match of yours that I unfortunately missed because of an Alice Cooper concert at the DuQuoin State Fair the same evening as the show. But the man that Alice Cooper accompanied to the ring at WrestleMania 3 was your opponent that night, Jake the Snake Roberts. What was it like getting to wrestle Jake the Snake Roberts?
Sean Chambers had called me up, and he said, "I got a question for you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Are you afraid of snakes?" And I said, "No, absolutely not," because my brother had snakes his whole life. And he was like, "Good." He's like, "'Cause you're wrestling Jake." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Showed to the building, and they're running a little late. Jake and them are. Um, at this time, sadly, Jake was not doing so well in his life.
Mm.
We've all known the struggles that he's faced with alcohol and drugs and whatnot. Now he's clean, which thank God he's doing better. But that time, he showed up a little inebriated. I was in the restroom at the time, using the restroom. He happened to walk in when I was using the restroom, and got in the stall by me. And he looked at me, and I had my tights on and stuff. And he goes, "Well, I guess you're the guy I'm working, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, Jake." I said, "Not very nice to meet you." And I said, I'm Playboy." And he said, "This is going to be easy." I was like, "Okay." So he's like, "I'm going to go take a nap." And he had like an hour before his signing, before the show or whatever. And so he went and took a nap, and I didn't bother him. Let him do his own thing the whole show. Didn't. Finally, about 5 minutes before our match, I walked up to him. I said, "Do you just want to walk and talk out there? Do you want to set something up back here?" He looks at me. He goes, "The only thing I need you to know is three lefts, bump on the right, short arm clothesline, DDT." I said, "Sure." He goes, "That's the finish. Three hard lefts, a right, bump on the right, short arm clothesline, DDT." Gotcha. No problem. So we go out there and we start this match. It's a very old school, very slow paced match. Me, a lot of cheating, whatnot. Um, Finally get down to the finish, and it's a simple three left jabs, bump on the right, picks me up, gives me the short arm clothesline, and gives me the DDT. 1, 2, 3. Probably the easiest match I've ever had in my life, to be honest. I didn't have to do anything because it was Jake the Snake Roberts. I was just out there gouging his eyes and running him across the ropes and choking and mouthing, and people were eating it up. They were screaming DDT at me. So he gives me the DDT, gets the 1, 2, 3. My manager gets in the ring. He's checking on me, and the crowd just screaming DDT anymore, which is Gaylord Stevens. If you know who Gaylord Stevens is, he had more
Absolutely.
heat than I had. He had more heat than I ever thought about could happen with the fans, and they were screaming DDT, DDT. So finally, Jake grabs him, puts him in it, gives him the DDT. He's laying there. He sets up. Jake sets up and looks at me and goes, "I should get paid double," and gets out of the ring. He said I should get paid double for giving two DDTs out in one night. And I was like, but he was really cool. Other than that, as soon as he got done, I mean, he was out. I mean, he slipped out the back door as soon as he got done wrestling. Threw one, wiped off with the towel, threw his shirt on, and he was gone. I didn't get to shake his hand or anything afterwards. But it was a good match. It was a very simple match, but it was probably like the highlight of my career was getting to wrestle Jake the Snake Roberts, of course.
Have you ever? I don't know like where your career's at now, but have you ever been able to meet Jake again now that he is better?
Um, I have not, unfortunately. I haven't met him since that date. And to be honest, I don't even know if he remembered the whole day. I don't even know if he remembered anything, to be honest, because he was pretty lit the whole time. But he performed, which was astonishing to me.
Well, we talked about Gaylord a little bit. Uh, what was it like being around Gaylord? Because I've got to meet him as a fan, and he just seems like a really entertaining guy. Just talking to him, talk with my group that would always come to the
The
shows. You have any
the
fun
person that
Gaylord stick?
Gaylord is in the ring is the person that Gaylord is in the back. I mean, he's absolutely comical. He's always cracking jokes. Him and Axe, of course, they're brothers.
Right.
Um, so those guys are just when you get them together, they're the funniest thing ever. They're my two favorite people in the locker room.
Yeah, I this is not a PG show, so you can say whatever you want, but I am gonna like some of the jokes that I heard Gaylord make one evening in Mount Vernon, Illinois. I think I'm gonna just best leave those to the imagination. But yeah, he was hilarious, and I was just enamored by Gaylord's presentation, where he's supposed to be this futuristic guy, but he's also in the past, and it's just
Yeah, it's both. Yeah,
he's got a robot arm, but the robot arm is a Nintendo Power Glove. And for some of the people that aren't from the Southern Illinois area, I hope I'm trying to describe him in a way you
yeah.
can picture.
A cut off finger Nintendo Power Glove,
And his accessory is an umbrella. Long
an
before,
umbrella.
long
I've been hit.
before umbrella became a mainstay in independent wrestling, the umbrella was
Oh,
done by him.
I probably had like 30 of those things broken over my head or whacking me in the back. just about just about probably every other show I got whacked with the umbrella somehow.
So we're gonna keeping with AAPW for a little while. You were pretty well a mainstay for the first year and a half that I was watching the show, and I don't expect you to remember every detail of all those spot shows in Mount Vernon and Marion and West Frankfort and Sparta and the like. But there was this one instance I remember where, and this was in Mount Vernon, I want to say, where I believe you went good. You turned on Gaylord, and I'm like, oh cool, It's
Right.
kind of like when Kurt Angle went good. It's like, oh okay, I don't have to. I can cheer him and not feel like I'm messing up anything anymore. And then the very next show they brought you back in Heron, you were back with Gaylord. Um, I don't expect you to remember all the creativity, but do you know like was there a plan to turn you good, or was there like a? Do
I
you
think
know
there
what
was
the
a
limbo was
plan.
there?
I think there was a plan to turn me baby. But however, I think there were short babies on the
Right,
next show, and they had to, think of something. I don't remember. I've barely been a babyface any of my career.
right,
I think I might have done it in when I worked at little shows in Anna for iCall. I did baby for maybe like 3 months just to try. I was like, look, I need to broaden my horizons here. I've
right.
never worked baby. I understand the aspects of how to work it. However, out in front of a crowd, it's just never, you know, I've never been able to do that. So they let me work baby for about 3 or 4 months there, and I really did not like it. Um, just that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It'd be nice to sell the merch. It'd be nice to be able to go out there and whatever and make the money. But you can do that being a heel too. But you just won't make as much.
Right.
Um, but I just didn't like. I feel like the heel controls the match almost.
Right.
I feel like he's the guy that's saying, okay, they're getting a little quiet. Let's do something to let's raise them back up here. Let's give you a little bit of comeback here for. He's kind of the guy that kind of feel the crowd, kind of can control the match. The baby can too, but whenever it's his time to shine, it's like, okay, I can hear the crowd's dying. Let's do something. That's always been is the intellectual part of it. That's where I feel like I excel, is with the intellectual part. The wrestling, it's all basic. I mean, that's, you train a monkey to take bumps. You can train a monkey to do this, but it's that mindset and that intellectual part that really makes the match.
After that incident I told you about, which I mean, that's a very logical reason. It could just it didn't have TV at the time. The AAPW didn't, so I mean, it could
Right.
just scenario called for it. I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but according to my memory, you weren't really around quite as regularly after that show. Was that when you went to the West Coast, like you mentioned earlier? Or was that a little bit before, or was
Um,
there, or am I
I,
just misremembering this?
I didn't move to Oregon until we start after the first season of TV tapings, I believe, maybe the
Okay,
second season. Um, yeah, I think it might have been the second season that I moved to Oregon. No, at that time probably I was getting a lot of other bookings,
gotcha.
and AAPW was my home. Um, and some of the shows they would say, "Hey, we don't need you for this show," so I'd take a booking somewhere else, of course, and then they'd call me like 2 days before the show and be like, "Hey, we need you at AAPW," and I'd be like, you said you didn't need me. I've already made arrangements. It would be wrong for me to cancel this other arrangement that I have um, on those guys. They promote me on their flyers. If we're doing this, I'd be like, if I could double shot, I would. But this is in Indiana or somewhere, out of the way.
Right.
And they understood because the owner was very, very tight with me, and he understood, like, yeah, it was my fault for saying we didn't need you. So there was a few shows where they were also trying to bring in new talent and get some of their I'm not gonna say more muscular, but they were trying to phase it to people that look more like wrestlers. And of course, I don't look like a wrestler. I look like a fat blob, but that was my job.
But
That was my job. So
it
I kind of
worked.
reached out. I kind of reached out, and I was just like, I'm going to broaden my horizons. I'm going to try to go to any place that'll take me. And then, like I said, it was during that second season of the AAPWs where my wife at the time had a good job opportunity arise, but it was in Oregon. So it was like, okay, I guess we're moving to Oregon. I had nobody there. But yeah, I think that might have been the time that I was just expanding my horizons and doing other shows just besides the local Southern Illinois shows.
So while you were expanding your horizons, what other promotions did you really get a good following or become popular in? Did you get opportunities with any of the, you can't see me doing the air quotes, big indies that are in the Midwest or Southern area? Anything of that nature?
Let's see, I did a couple IWA Mid South shows.
Please tell me about those, because
Uh,
that's feel like anybody who's ever gone through there has a story.
yeah, I mean, I did what they call it, a tryout show
Okay.
with one of my buddies, and we did fairly well. It was kind of like a gong show. They gave you like 4 or 5 minutes to put on a match, and if they didn't like the match how it started, they just gong you and say, "All right, get the hell out of the belt, get out of the ring." Um, but me and Jay Spade actually went to the we drove a long way to try out. We paid like $35 a piece to try out, so there was probably 50 guys there, and I was like, Ian just made a bunch of money off of us because he's charged us all $35, $40 to try out, and there's like 50 guys back here. Um, Pretty much what he was doing was getting his money ready for the show the next night. And like 2 or 4 of the guys that were picked from the show before the night before were going to wrestle on the show the next night. Um, and I remember doing the tryout show and not getting a great review, but not getting a bad review. It was like somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And we drove home that night, and I talked to my buddy, and I was like, "I'm sorry we didn't get on the show for the next day. I really thought we would, you know." And he was like, "It's no big deal." So I dropped him off, went home, and then as soon as I got home, my phone rang, and it was Ian. He was like, "Hey, would you like to come back for the show tomorrow?" And I was like, "I've been drove 7 hours home. Like, I wish you would have told me. I would have slept in my car, you know, or whatever, you know." And he was like, "Well, I just want you. I just want you." And I was like, "It's going to cost you. Like, it's 7 hours. Like, I'm pretty much going to have to turn around and drive right back." And he paid up before I told him. I was like, "Look, I've heard things about not getting paid here. I've heard about this and that." And I was like, "You know, I drove 7 hours. You know, all I asked for was this amount of money." And he was like, "I got you. I got you." And the boys were like, "Go get him before you wrestle." And I found him, and he gave me my money, thankfully. So I haven't had any horror stories about that. It was ran very loosely. Um, he was just running around all the place, and I was trying to get confirmation of my match if who was going to be in it. It started out as a single match, then it got put into three-way, then it was a three-way tag team match, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And finally, like 5 minutes before we went out to do the show, it ended up being like a five-man scramble match, and I was like, holy crap.
Do you remember who else was in the scramble with you?
Um, I have no idea. Just some guys that had worked the night before. I have never seen them before in my life or heard them before in my life, unfortunately. Um, but it was fun, I guess you could say it was fun. The crowd was super low. There was probably like 8 people in attendance. There was no crowd at all, hardly.
You just so you said 8, right?
Eight, yeah, 08, yeah,
I was saying like not 80 or even
no.
18. 8.
And the boys had told me at this time he was doing those gimmick shows with the tryout shows to get people to pay to, you know, try to be on the roster, and he was getting the money from them to be able to pay for the next show because he usually brought in a name or so the next show. Usually he was, you know, he always tried to bring in somebody to try to draw. And I think I think that show that I want to say there was like 8 people there, and I believe the person was, I want to say it was New Jack was there, you know, but yeah, it was New Jack, and there was nobody there, and I remember New Jack saying, "I'm not going out there and wrestling for 8 people."
Any other New
And
Jack stories while we're here? I mean, I've never
well,
gotten to ask anybody
I,
else about New Jack.
no, I haven't. I mean, I haven't. No, never met him other than that once, and he was. I mean, he stayed away from us the whole night, did his thing, and then he left too. I mean, a lot of those guys, they're just ready to get home, get back on, you know, or to the next show, so they
Right.
can rest. But he went out there and smashed somebody with a guitar and a golf club and a computer keyboard. I think it was like a whole 2 minute match or whatever. And I don't think his music ever stopped. I'm pretty sure he just walked out to his music, beat the crap out of the guy, and pinned him, and his music just kept playing the whole time.
Well, unfortunately for all the listeners that were hoping for a nice, juicy New Jack story, we're sorry to disappoint you, but that's reality
Yeah,
of the travels, unfortunately.
I was
But
just trying to
that's
stay
still cool. You
away
got to
from
be.
him at that point.
It's still cool. You got to be on a show with New Jack.
Yeah, I just like I'm staying away from him. I'm not wrestling him. That's all I know, so I'm good.
So AAPW starts TV,
Right.
and you are brought back. Did you notice any differences in the company from when it was just doing those spot shows in the church gyms and the YMCA's, etc., to when it became a TV product? What changed in all
Um,
AAPW from then to their debut on WSIL?
the stress level changed. A lot of these guys had never worked TV before. I was one of those guys. I'd never worked TV before. Of course, my promos were all shot live and right there on the spot in the ring, you know, at a spot show. You know, recording and doing takes and okay, we want you to do like this a little bit. You know, we want you to have like this in your voice. So we want you to have, you know, okay, being directed. You know, that was fine for me. I'm used to being directed. A lot of the other guys, they were just lost when it came to a TV camera, you know, and how to shoot a promo and how to talk without just reacting from the crowd. That's a whole different. Um, Also, the booking changed a little bit at some point between bookers. Um, the owner was booking for a while. Then then he hired somebody to come in and take the book or create the matches and whatnot. Um, and we saw a lot less of our guys from the area getting time. We started seeing more guys from like the Memphis area, more guys from the Arkansas area, more guys from the Dyersburg, Tennessee area, and the Booker had, he had connections with these guys. And don't get me wrong, all these guys are phenomenal athletes. Um, but the crowd didn't know these guys like they knew the fan base, or the base of wrestlers that were already there. So trying to, it's great to bring in new stars, but when you bring in 8 at a time, it's kind of hard to get them all in the spotlight at one
Right.
time without pushing other people aside. And a lot of people felt, slighted by that. It was like, okay, he's bringing in all these people, and the guys that started this company now are getting a match every three or four shows, and these guys are getting a match every show. Um, it did kind of stink. Was the booking good? Yeah, it was well written. It was good. Did it have an effect on the boys? Absolutely, because we had all had our spot. We all had earned our spot, and then these spots were taken away.
You'll have to
Um,
forgive me for this next question, because
sure.
I always go back to this talking about AAPW, but I talk about main event, and there was a lot of memorable stuff on main event. However, and I apologize to you. Were you on that show?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. I was on that show.
okay,
Um,
and I apologize for not remembering it, but it was just like among you know a lot of the you mentioned the new talent. I always kind of couldn't believe that like AAPW got Pac
in
and
Generico
Generico and Colt Cabana. I
Matt,
mean, I've been begging Sean to bring in. I mentioned this last week on the Huntsberger episode. I was begging Sean ever since Cabana got released from the WWE, going like, "Dude, he lives in Chicago, booking, booking, booking." And he's like, "Oh well,
right.
I don't know about guys like him." So I was like so caught up in all this, and then and the crowd and everything. I've unfortunately forgotten some of the lower card matches. I'm not saying you're a low card wrestler or nothing. I've just kind
Right,
of
right, right, right.
forgotten about that. So I forgot whether you worked the show, so I want to apologize for that. But that segues into my next question. What was your how did it feel for you being on that show with everything? Because to me, it was kind of like the pinnacle of AAPW for like especially fans like me and my friends who were there from I don't want to say the beginning, but we're kind of there in those 30 people shows in Royalton, Illinois, and those you know
Right.
dingy church gyms that didn't have air conditioning and stuff like that. To finally see like this big crowd of a lot of people coming to see All American Pro Wrestling. Like as a fan, I felt really happy about that. Did you have similar feelings, or with the change in the style and the change of the booking, did you feel differently? How'd you feel at main event?
The change in the styles doesn't bother me. I can adapt to that. That's not a big deal. I was in a 5-man scramble match that night as well, I believe, with like Bull Bronson and Justice and Jay Spade,
Okay, I remember now.
and
Yep. So I remember Jay
there was a
Spade
big
now. Yep.
yeah, there was a big 5-man. There was a 5-man scramble, and I think we were like second or something, so we were kind of on the lower end of the card. Um, Not a super memorable match, but fun to that. But to see people hanging off the rafters at that place and just seeing how many people were packed into that place, it was really, really awesome. Those guys, Pac, Generico, they were super nice guys. Matt Cross was super nice. I mean, every one of them, were great. With the booking that night, I had asked like weeks prior, like, am I going to be on this main event show? Because we had so much talent coming through the door at that time. It was like, you know, am I even going to have a spot? And they said, yeah. We'll find you a spot. We'll find you a spot. And I was like, okay. And there was a lot of guys asking that, saying, we want to work this show. We've been working all these TV tapings. We worked prior to that at the churches. We were, we'd like to be on this big show. And, they were just trying to find spots for everybody. And the way it ended up crumbling was like, okay, 5-man scramble match. All right, awesome. So, that's what we did. We did the best we could do with the 5-man scramble match. Went out there and had fun, and nobody got hurt, and that's a good night.
Yeah.
Nobody gets hurt. You have fun. You get paid. That's a good night.
You're really, and I'm not trying. Please don't take this as me guilt tripping you. You're really making me think a little because I was all excited about all this AAPW bringing in all this again air quote big name indie talent, but then now that I'm like hearing that, oh, so many guys I also liked before they brought this talent in were kind of unfortunately getting the short end of the stick. I'm kind of feeling a little bad about
I
being
mean,
so excited about that.
but you know what? We knew those guys were coming in, and we knew they were going to be placed in. We knew they were going to have their match. We knew that Matt Cross is going to have the match with Poker Face, and okay, that's not that much. That's not what two matches. Okay, that's not that bad. Um, but we started to notice some of the other guys getting knocked off. Hey, we don't have room for you tonight. Guys that had been doing things for us, that have been doing enhancement talent or whatever you want to call it, or it's just like, hey, we don't have a spot for you tonight. And usually they throw maybe a big battle royal before everything starts. I don't know if they did that show or not, just to let those guys kind of get some play time in front of the crowd. But I remember there being like a strict, we're going to DVD with this. I don't know if we were doing I don't think we did iPay-per-view, but I knew we were going to DVD with this. They wanted a very strict card, a very strict rundown of the times. We'd never had that before. With TV tapings, yeah, they would tell us, okay, you guys got 10 minutes to do your thing. Okay. With this, it was like, with intros and everything, y'all got 10 minutes. And we're like, holy crap, like, there's 5 of us. Intros are a minute apiece. That's 5 minutes, so we got 5 minutes to do a match. And, we tried to put together the best we could. I mean, it did hurt a little bit, but we knew that a lot of those people were there to see us, and we knew that probably about half weren't there to see us. And that was okay. That was fine by us. As long as everybody had a good time and they got their money's worth, we were happy.
I've told Livewire this privately. I told Kevin this last week, and I'll tell you this just because you're part of the show. That show is probably my top 5 I've ever been in person to see, and this includes All In, WrestleMania 35, uh, the Ring of Honor and New Japan joint show at Madison Square Garden, and the Royal Rumble. All those, this show is in the top 5 with them. So,
Oh, well, that's awesome. We're happy to make that top 5 list. I mean, that's unbeknownst to us, and to have somebody that cares about us that much and says, this is a top 5 match, or 5 show that I've been to. That means a lot to us because, we never thought we'd ever be anybody's top 10 show, or anything like that.
it's
But
just,
just to have, it was a
unfortunately,
different feel that night. It just made sense with Kevin being the first time Kevin was in the ring that night too. Had a lot of media, we had a lot of media coverage, and a lot of people in that town knew who Kevin was, and he actually got a bigger pop than anybody that night. Generico, Pac. I mean, yeah, they were known, but everybody knew who Kevin Huntsberger was. Everybody in that era knows that's the guy from the news,
right.
And to get him in there and to have him, do a simple match, but the outcome be such a great outcome and him to play his role perfectly, that really, I think half the fans are there to see him,
I again, for all the people that listen to all this, if I'm reiterating a lot from the other interviews, I apologize. But
You're good.
um, it's funny. I mentioned to Kevin last week that there were so many people there to see Kevin. And then but what was also really cool to me was like whenever I'd be around somebody and go like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from such and such Indiana, and I just really want to see Pac. Or I'm from something Tennessee, but I've always wanted to see Pac and Generico
Right.
together. So AAPW drawing in those fans to me is like, wow, that's awesome. To me it was like that show is AAPW at its fullest potential.
Yeah. That was AEPW at its highest level.
Uh,
And then after that, I left. I believe after main event I think main event was might have been my last episode there before I went to Oregon. Actually, I believe it was. Um, and everybody gave me a big send off, and they said, thank you for doing everything you did, which was very kind of them. And I did come back. I did fly back all the way back for a show. Like I believe it was one of their bigger name shows or whatever they're doing. I did fly back for that. I do remember
They had
that.
a couple more after that. They had one in the
Yeah,
summer and one in the fall.
yeah. I don't remember which one it was, but I did fly back for one. Saw all the boys, had a great time, and then flew back to Oregon. Um, but I miss those times a lot. I mean, I reminisce on those times a lot because those were some really good times with AAPW.
Absolutely. I missed I'm really glad that they kind of got to close their show out with that tribute show to Curly. But
Yeah.
it's or I shouldn't say it's a tribute show, it's a benefit show. Um, so you said you moved to Oregon. Did you continue to pursue wrestling in Oregon, or and what
Yeah,
was
I
the
wrestled
wrestling
for a
scene
couple
like?
companies out there. I
What was the
wrestled
scene
for
like
in
there?
the scene was quite a bit different. Of course, not knowing anybody, I knew one person that that he had moved to Oregon a couple years before that, and he was a buddy of mine. So uh, I I kind of got with him. I went to a couple shows. I went to an NWA affiliate show. It was okay. Um, very, 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 very different workers up there, I would say. Um,
How so?
da- Down here, these guys down here were a little more physical. We're a little more friendly with each other. So I always tell my guys, I said, man, if you're going to hit me, lay that in. Let this crowd hear it. I mean, regular punches, yeah, let's work those. You're going to hit me in the back, nail me. If you're going to chop me, nail me. All those kinds of stuff. Kind of more of a snug, what we call not stiff, but snug style of wrestling,
Gotcha.
where we forearm, you're going to feel it. We're going to give you a forearm, you're going to feel it. Up there, they were so light that I had to try to react to something that didn't even hit me. Um, like everything was so much softer, and I was telling these guys, you guys can hit me. You guys can really lay that stuff in on me. I'm tough. I can take this. And the guy, they were like, we don't do that here. We're just like that. And I was like, yeah, but whenever you give me an arm drag, I want you to hook that arm with me so I know that I'm hooked in. I don't want it to be like super light that I don't know you're there. I mean, it was a different type of work. I got called stiff a lot, which means your punches are heavy, or your kicks are heavy, or your forearms are a little heavy. I didn't know how to work any other way because I'd worked around with these boys so long and around a bunch of guys from southern region, Midwest region. We're good old boys. Hit me hard. I could take it. Um, Up there, it was a different scene. Those guys were. I don't want to say prima donnas. I will say they are. It's a lot of more politics and things that go on, and I couldn't do it. I'm not the politic guy. I'm not gonna kiss anybody's butt to get to where I want to be. I'm just not that guy. And I was like, I wrestled probably out of the year and a half I lived there, I probably wrestled 10 times, just because I tried to work with these guys, and they'd all say he's too stiff, he's too big, he doesn't. And I was like I'm trying here. Like, I don't. As a big man, I like to see. I had promoters say you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and I'd go, well, it's different than what every other big man does. I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to
Right.
throw the enziguris. I'm trying to do the stuff off the top. I'm trying to do the dives. I want to do that stuff. I had a like Samoa Joe mentality. Like, Samoa Joe doesn't always throw himself through the ropes, but when he does, it's effective. Um,
Right.
and they just didn't buy that. They wanted me to be the slow, choke them, use your fat, run them, post them, and just keep flopping in the corner. Like, I'm not that style of wrestler, and they just couldn't get that. The I tried to lighten up. Like, I didn't think I was hitting them hard. Maybe they're just wimps. I don't know, but they just it was just a different style. Not a different style of wrestling, just a different style of manliness, I guess, because I'm used to getting popped pretty good, and these guys are 3 inches away from my face, and it's like movie punches, and I just couldn't get into it very well there. Um, and the politics, like I said, were bad there.
So you're back in the area now?
What
Back
was
in
that? Sorry.
Are you back in the back in the Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, Metro East area now? Are you back close by? Are you still in Oregon or?
Yeah, I moved after that. I moved back home. Came back to work here. Um, I think AAPW had folded by then. By the time I come back,
Right. Where
and
you still working nowadays?
am I still working now?
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually trying. I'm actually going to be like getting back into it pretty soon.
Okay.
I did
Awesome.
have some knee. I did have some knee problems. This last Curly tribute show was kind of a test to see if my knee would hold up. To be honest,
Right.
because I knew I wouldn't be doing much, but I would be doing enough to where I could see if my knee could go. Um, I'm all good on the knee front, on the physical front. I'm all good. I'm just now reacquiring some new gear. I'm reacquiring some time to get away from the job, which the shooter, as they call it. I'm getting those days off where I can, I'll be off in time to be able to make shows. So now I'm looking for whenever these shows do open back up, hopefully getting back into some of the shows. I've reached out to a couple companies and hopefully, it works out, and it may not, but hopefully I can rebuild, whatever little bit of legacy I already had. There's not much in the way of Southern Illinois right now. Since AAPW's gone, I know there's one opening up in Anna, a new like hardcore
Yes.
wrestling thing. I have not reached out to them or anything like that. It's just, I guess, preference on the hardcore stuff. I don't want to. I'm getting old. I don't know if I want to put my body through barbed wire thumbtacks and stuff every month. I don't know if I can. I'm not trying to sound weak. I'm just trying to be like,
Right. Oh, I get
I
it.
want to be around. I want to be around to have grandkids someday and stuff like that. And I don't want to be all cut up and mangled and stuff. But I mean, I've done hardcore stuff before. It's just, I don't know if I want to do it every time.
I get you. So,
But I wish there
go
was more
ahead.
promotions around here. I wish there was more promotions around here. I think I've reached out to some Dyersburg. I've reached out. I need to get my Missouri wrestling license. I haven't had that. If I get that, I'll
Oh yeah.
probably reach out to Cape and all that good stuff. But
And then there's the
that
ones up
Missouri.
up by St. Louis that are on fire right now too. You could also reach out to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to have to get that Missouri license. It's all going to be a piece by piece thing. I'm not
Absolutely.
rich as much as I like to flaunt it on as a wrestler. I'm not stinking rich. So it takes a little bit of time to get everything built back up when you got rid of all your stuff. Yeah. Sadly, I got rid of all my stuff like an idiot. So I've kind of had to buy all that stuff back, and that takes time. But now with this COVID stuff going on, I don't know when. I know Cape ran a show, but I don't know about Illinois if they're going to be running anything recently or when Tennessee's going to open back up. I have no idea. So I reached out to them. That's all I can do. They said, okay, cool. We'll let you know when we know more. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to get back out there and do some things for sure.
I would, if it's okay with you, I'd like to take the last part of this episode to do some word association, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right. First name is Sean Chambers.
Sean Chambers, he's a very, very nice gentleman. He ran his business well, always paid me like he said he was going to pay me. I love Sean Chambers. He's a very nice guy, and like I said, I would work for him again in a heartbeat.
Livewire McGuire.
Edmund and I, we go back to the training days. He used to come down here to Sykeston, and we used to train together at some of Max out. He's a very good guy, top babyface in Southern Illinois. You had to do nothing and would get the people to scream for him. And I was like, how does he do it? He's got that magic, and sometimes you need a little magic in wrestling.
Gaylord Stevens.
Gaylord Stevens,
If we haven't already touched on it. Sorry.
The best manager, hands down. I'm not going to say in the Midwest. I'm going to say across the U.S., this man was a talent that was missed by multiple companies. Missed by the WWE, missed by WCW, WCW maybe not so much because they were closed, but, missed by all these. He's one of those talents that managers aren't seen around much anymore like that. In the ways of the Jimmy Harts and stuff like
Right.
that. He reminds me of people like that. And there's not many people like him. And it takes a special person to be a manager that I believe could get fame in any company that he went to.
Uh, kind of branching off of that, Axe Allward.
Axe is a very good friend of mine. Axe is legitimately the old school warrior. That's the way I met him. That's the way he's always been. Kids come up to him all the time and they're going to wrestle me. I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And he just look at him and say, okay, that sounds great. We can do some of that. But this is what we're gonna slow it down and do some old school stuff. We're gonna play with the crowd. We're gonna work the crowd because as bad as you want to do 145,000 spots, I want to do three, and I want to make them look good, and I want the crowd to go, ouch. Um, and he's that old school mentality that he's gonna let you get your stuff in, but it's gonna make sense. And that's the thing about acts; it's always made sense with them.
Stephen Davis.
Stephen Davis is the hardest chopper I've ever met in my life. Um, he's a very stern guy. When you look at the face when he comes out, he's got that cowl, the scowl. The face is just the meanest guy you ever seen in your life. When he gets to the back, he's one of the happiest, most joking, fun-loving guys there was. Him and Axe and Gaylord and me, we were all the guys that everybody was, oh God, you guys crack me up so much. And kid has that persona that you go out there and he's straight face and just is going to kill you. That's what he looked like. He was such a great guy, and he still is a great guy.
I've not to take over here, but that reminds me of just the this story from a show in Chester where um, Stephen Davis's real co-workers were all at that show because they all worked in Chester. And my friend who would draw different pictures of the wrestlers and usually give them away, he drew a big picture without knowing what his real job was, mind you, drew a big picture of Stephen Davis dressed like the cop Jim Dangle with the tiny shorts from Reno
Right?
911. And I remember Stephen Davis coming out, trying to do his mean face, in the entrance, and you can see him like break character and
Cracking.
smile, and then like immediately remember where he was. He's like, "Yeah, you take that down right now."
There's been multiple times I've went out there and seen people making, have a sign that made fun of me or something. And you got to keep that face, but you're chuckling on the inside. You're like, this is awesome. Like,
but
we live for that kind of stuff.
Stephen Davis has that sign now. Like we ended up like it went on the road with AAPW until one time like we finally caught him and he's like, "I want this sign."
Nice.
And my friend's like, "You can have it. It's yours. Just can you let me take a picture of you with it?" He's like, "Absolutely."
Nice.
So I got two more names here now after the just being reminded of that story. Mike Masters.
Mike Masters, he came in a little bit later during our, my AAPW run. Not like too late, but he was from Chicago, I believe. He was a very nice guy. He knew what he was doing. Has always been great to me. His wife is very nice to me. His son's an amazing person too. Mike was one of those guys that would do anything that's best for business, and a lot of times some guys won't do that. And Mike was all those ones that said, "Yeah, I'll take the fall. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I'll let Kevin Hunsberger win. I don't, all those things that make somebody a true pro is allowing those moments of weakness stuff. Did it look weak that he got beat by Kevin Hunsberger? No, because the way it went down. But still, him taking that loss, that was his way of giving Kevin the rub and saying, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for doing this for us, because Kevin was drawing a lot of the crowd too. And but Mike is a solid guy and one of my close friends.
Kevin Hunsberger.
Kevin Hunsberger, we have had very limited interaction with Kevin. I have anyway, but every interaction I've had with him, he's been very pleasant, very eager. He's a little timid at times, but that comes with he's not a trained professional wrestler. He knows certain things. He knows, the A, B's, and C's, but not the P, Q, R, S, T, the ladder stuff. But what he did was draw emotion, and that's harder to do. Maybe he drew emotion because he wasn't, seen as a trained wrestler, but he just drew that that sympathy from the fans that we needed. And Kevin's a great guy, and he's done a lot for us, and gotten us on the news in the mornings and things like that. That was just helping us out tremendously. And we'll always be appreciative of Kevin for that. He's a great guy.
Last but not least, Chris Hagstrom.
Chris Hagstrom, he was always the guy that he talked to me, and he was like, "Be different." When everybody else was saying, "Do this," Chris Hagstrom was like, "No, no, no. You should be different." If everybody's saying do the fat guy stuff, do the big belly splash, do this, do that. Chris Hatcher was like, hey man, throw that enziguri, throw that Pele kick, throw, do that crazy stuff, jump off the ropes and stuff like that. You didn't see 300-pound men doing that too often. But he was the guy that kind of said, old school is great, but mixing it with old school and new school together, that works a little bit better for TV. It's a little more flashy. So Chris gave me a little bit of pointers on, while he never knew anything about the business, he was like, he knew what was good for videography. And just seeing a big guy just do nothing all the time is kind of boring. So thanks, Chris, for getting me out of my shell of just doing the normal big guy stuff.
All right. And thank you, Playboy Paul Rose, for agreeing to do this show. I really enjoyed this, and I'm really glad that you took time out of your day to help me out with this. And I learned a lot about AAPW, and I'm hoping that the listeners enjoyed it as well.
Well, pleasure's all mine, man. Thanks anytime. Anytime you want a round two, just hit me up.
All right, sounds good. And thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this, please give me a like, share, subscribe for more content, not just from the world of pro wrestling, but from the world of comics, gaming, anime, and all things geek culture. Follow me on all my social media pages, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter at athletic_geek89, and Instagram at athleticgeek89. But thanks again to Playboy Paul Rose. I'm out.
Thanks.
Later.
Thanks for having me.